We are going to fight again, whether it's in the octagon or on the sidewalk. You don't say the stuff he said.
McGregor dismantled Poirier in 10.6 seconds flat. A crisp left-hand combination dropped the Louisiana native to the canvas, and ground strikes sealed the first-round TKO at the 46 mark of round 1. Referee Herb Dean waved it off as McGregor's star exploded into the stratosphere of mainstream celebrity. For Poirier, it was the most devastating, most publicly humiliating loss of his professional career. He later admitted that McGregor's relentless pre-fight taunts, the mocking of his chin, the casual predictions of a quick finish, the wholesale dismissal of everything Poirier had worked and bled for, had infiltrated his psyche completely, causing him to fight with raw, undisciplined emotion rather than calculated intelligence. That single loss, those 106 seconds of total destruction, fundamentally rewired Dustin Poirier's entire approach to the sport and to his own identity as a fighter. Over the next 6 years, while McGregor chased and captured the featherweight title by knocking out Jose Aldo in a historic 13 seconds at UFC 94, then moved up to lightweight to defeat Eddie Alvarez and become the first simultaneous two-division champion in UFC history, then crossed over to boxing to face Floyd Mayweather in one of the highest-grossing events in combat sports history, then returned to MMA to lose via submission to Khabib Nurmagomedov, then accumulated a growing list of legal issues, personal controversies, and extended competitive layoff. During all of that time, Poirier quietly and systematically rebuilt himself from the ground up into one of the most dangerous and technically complete lightweight fighters on the entire UFC roster. He defeated former Empress Eddie Alvarez and Anthony Pettis. He finished Justin Gaethje in a Fight of the Year classic. He defeated Max Holloway to win the interim lightweight title in April. His boxing sharpened into a genuinely world-class weapon. His grappling deepened into a serious threat from multiple positions. And his calf kick, those devastating, precisely targeted low kicks aimed at the peroneal nerve on an opponent's lead leg, became the paramount tactical instrument that would ultimately rewrite the McGregor rivalry from beginning to end. By late 2020, the two men agreed to run it back at lightweight. The build-up carried an initially respectful tone. McGregor even pledged a $500,000 donation to Poirier's Good Fight Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting at-risk youth programs in Lafayette, Louisiana. That charitable promise would very soon become one of the single ugliest flashpoints in this entire rivalry. But before the money dispute, before the personal attacks, before everything that followed, they had to fight. UFC 2057 took place on January 23, 2021, at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island. McGregor came out sharp and aggressive in round 1, landing hard left hands and a shovel right hook that snapped Poirier's head back visibly. But Poirier absorbed the early fire with remarkable composure and began methodically chopping McGregor's lead right leg with heavy, precisely placed calf kicks that accumulated damage with every single landing. The fight site's technical breakdown described the strategy as the death of a southpaw. Poirier exploited the southpaw versus southpaw stance matchup to systematically deaden McGregor's lead leg, dulling the Irishman's explosive entries and exits, and progressively stripping away the very footwork and lateral movement that made Conor McGregor one of the most dangerous strikers in the sport. By round 2, the accumulated damage was catastrophic and unmistakable. McGregor's leg buckled repeatedly under his own weight. His trademark pivoting and angling evaporated entirely. Poirier pressed forward with supreme confidence, trapped McGregor against the cage fence, and landed a devastating counter right hook that dropped McGregor badly to the canvas. Poirier then swarmed with ferocious, fight-ending ground and pound, hammering punches to the head until referee Herb Dean had seen enough and stepped in to stop the contest at the 20:32 mark of round 2. The official statistics told the story definitively. Poirier landed 48 of 91 significant strikes at a 52% accuracy rate, compared to McGregor's 29 of 66 at just 43%. It was the first knockout or TKO loss of Conor McGregor's entire UFC career. The trilogy was officially tied at 1 fight apiece. The aftermath of UFC 2057 is precisely where the rivalry mutated from professional competition into something far deeper and far more permanent. Genuine, visceral, personal hatred. Poirier went public with accusations that McGregor had completely ghosted him on the $500,000 donation, claiming his team had sent all the necessary details and received nothing but dead silence from McGregor's camp. McGregor responded defensively, at one point publicly questioning the legitimacy of Poirier's charity itself, and he briefly threatened to cancel the trilogy fight entirely over the embarrassment. Poirier later acknowledged he may have jumped the gun going public rather than handling it privately, but the damage to the relationship was irreversible. The donation was eventually redirected to a related cause and the trilogy was confirmed, but the tone between these two men had shifted permanently from professional respect to open, unrestrained animosity. And then arrived the build-up to UFC, and that is where the rivalry descended into genuine, unambiguous darkness. McGregor went lower than he had ever gone in any feud with any opponent in his entire career. He directed deeply personal, vulgar, and degrading attacks at Poirier's wife, Jolie. He called Poirier an inbred hillbilly. He made explicit threats. He posted and later deleted a series of tweets directly attacking Poirier's family that screenshots immortalized across the internet forever, long after McGregor tried to scrub them from existence. To grasp how deeply McGregor's words cut into Poirier's core, you need to understand what Jolie Poirier means to this man, and he has explained it himself, in his own words, with a level of vulnerability that is extraordinarily rare among professional cage fighters.
I didn't have a goal, and when I found fighting, I wanted to be the best at that, so everything else didn't matter to me. You know, whatever that outlet is, even like, I was talking with a guy, I just did a conference where I spoke in Mexico a couple of days ago. He has a nonprofit where he builds skate parks in cities, and he's built some in New Orleans. And I think just something so simple as a skateboard and a place to go ride and meet people and the camaraderie and stuff you learn from that to get out of bad places. Fighting was that for me. That was my safe place when I was young.
Jolie Poirier drove Dustin to his very first professional fight in Arkansas when he didn't even own a car. She stayed with him in the cheapest, most rundown motels in America, soggy carpets, barely functioning lights, while he weighed in for fights that paid almost nothing. She was his anchor when he had no direction, his believer when he had no self-belief.
When I was in juvenile detention, and me and her might have not even been dating at the time, she was writing me letters every week. One of the only, besides my mother, only letters I would get was her. And when I got out of juvenile detention, she was there. She drove all the way out, to watch me leave and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm gonna marry this girl.
McGregor dragged that woman's name through the mud for clicks, for psychological advantage, for the manufactured chaos that fuels pay-per-view buys. He crossed a line that Dustin Poirier has never, not for a single day in the years since, forgiven or forgot. And on July 10th, 2021, at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, in front of a sold-out arena, Poirier stepped into the octagon to settle the score with a man he now genuinely, deeply, and thoroughly despised. UFC 2064 was the rubber match, the third, and as events would unfold, the final fight of the trilogy. The fight opened competitively, both men loaded with bad intentions. McGregor used spinning body kicks and straight lefts. Poirier countered with leg kicks and relentless forward pressure. They clinched and went to the ground. McGregor attempted a guillotine choke. Poirier escaped and answered with elbows and vicious ground strikes from top position. Poirier accumulated 3 minutes and 18 seconds of control time on the mat. McGregor accumulated exactly 0. Then, in the dying seconds of the round, as the two men exchanged heavy swings on the feet and separated, McGregor stepped backward to reset his stance, and his left tibia and fibula snapped grotesquely beneath him in a compound fracture visible to every camera in the arena. He collapsed to the canvas in agony. Referee Herb Dean stopped the fight at the 5-minute mark of round 1 via doctor stoppage. Poirier won. The fracture was likely initiated by a checked kick earlier in the round that weakened the bone before the step back completed the catastrophic break. McGregor was stretched out of the arena, underwent emergency surgery, and has not competed in a professional mixed martial arts bout since that night, a layoff that by February 2026 had stretched past 4.5 years. A legacy carved in bone. The trilogy was settled. Poirier held a decisive 2-1 series lead. McGregor won the opener at featherweight back in 2014, but Poirier won both lightweight rematches, finishing McGregor each time. Total fight time across all 3 bouts, approximately 14 minutes and 18 secs across 58 combined seconds of action. Short, explosive, violent affairs that produced 2 knockouts and a broken leg. Dana White initially floated the possibility of a 4th fight once McGregor healed from the surgery, but it never materialized. And rather than coast on his trilogy victory into a comfortable, quiet retirement, Poirier continued. Stepping into the cage against the most dangerous men on the planet, he challenged Charles Oliveira for the undisputed lightweight championship at UFC 269 in December 2021, and lost via rear naked choke submission in round 3 after a competitive start on the feet. He fought Justin Gaethje for the symbolic BMF title at UFC 291 in July 2023, losing by unanimous decision in a brutal, exhausting war that lived up to every expectation set by their first classic. He bounced back with a dominant knockout, veteran-savvy victory over the rising French contender Benoit Saint. He earned yet another shot at the undisputed lightweight belt at UFC 302 in June 2024, challenging the dominant champion Islam Makhachev, and lost via fifth-round submission at his third unsuccessful bid for the one title that always seemed to slip through his fingers at the final, cruelest possible moment. And then, on July 19, 2025 at UFC 318 at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, in his home state, surrounded by the people and the culture and the community that shaped him from a troubled teenager into a world-class fighter, Dustin Poirier fought Max Holloway for the third and final time in a 5-round farewell war for the BMF belt. It was a classic back-and-forth battle. Holloway won by unanimous decision, scores of 48-47, 49-46, and when it was over, Poirier placed his gloves in the center of the octagon, embraced the crowd, and walked away from professional fighting with a career record of 30 wins, 10 losses, and 1 no contest. He was 36 years old, 15 knockouts, and TKOs inside the UFC octagon, the 5th highest total of significant strikes landed in the history of the entire organization, tied for the most fight of the night bonuses in UFC history, with 15 total post-fight performance bonuses across his career. 3 separate shots at the undisputed lightweight championship that all ended in defeat. The one prize, the one accolade, the one piece of gold that always eluded him no matter how close he came. But not a single voice anywhere in the mixed martial arts community. Not one commentator, not one analyst, not one fellow fighter questions whether Dustin Poirier belongs in the UFC Hall of Fame. The man's credentials are beyond dispute.
I didn't have a car. She drove me to my first fight in Arkansas. I didn't even have a car. She stayed with me like in a motel, the worst, like a Motel 8, Motel 6. They kept the lights on for us. It was barely, the carpet was soggy and nasty, and you know those kind of hotels.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, she drove me to weigh-ins, everything, I don't know. I just could never do that again with another person because she's seen the struggles from the beginning. So I could never rebuild this, and I never want to have to.
So when
the question that hovered over everything after retirement was simple: could walking away from the sport finally kill the grudge? Consider the extraordinary number of emotional layers operating simultaneously beneath the surface. Poirier, at 37 years old, officially retired, working as an ESPN and Paramount analyst, living back home in Lafayette, Louisiana, running businesses, braiding his 8-year-old daughter's hair after school. This man still carries the weight of what Conor McGregor said about his wife during the darkest chapter of their rivalry. He still carries the scar tissue from that 2014 first-round knockout, the 10:06 seconds of total destruction that forced him to rebuild his entire identity as a fighter from scratch. He still carries the sting of the charity dispute, the ghosted $500,000 donation, the public questioning of his Good Fight Foundation's legitimacy by the most famous and most followed fighter on the planet. And he still carries the frustrating, maddening, endlessly gnawing knowledge that despite holding a definitive 2-1 trilogy advantage over McGregor, despite finishing the man twice at lightweight, despite outlanding him in significant strikes, out-controlling him on the ground, and outfighting him in virtually every meaningful statistical category across their final 2 meetings, a significant and persistently vocal portion of the global MMA fan base still elevates Conor McGregor above him in the historical conversation about greatness. The official record tells one clean, simple story: McGregor won at 45 pounds in 2014, Poirier won twice at 55 pounds in 20. The running tally of insults absorbed, of promises broken, of families attacked and dragged into public spectacle, of legacies defended and questioned, is far more complicated, far more painful, and far less easily resolved than any win-loss column could ever capture. McGregor became the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 divisional championships simultaneously. He holds the fastest knockout in UFC title fight history at a staggering. He transformed the sport's global popularity, commercial reach, and cultural footprint more than any single fighter in the history of the organization. He holds, as he himself proclaimed on social media in one of his trademark grandiose declarations, every single fiscal record in the company's history. And yet, and this is the part that matters most, the part that explains everything, in the one rivalry that defined both of their careers with the greatest emotional intensity and the highest personal stakes, it is Dustin Poirier who emerged victorious on the scorecards, and it is Dustin Poirier who absolutely categorically and ferociously will not allow a single living soul on the internet to ever forget that fact. Whether a fourth fight between these two men materializes at the White House, or at any other venue on any other date on any other card, remains pure speculation as of this moment. In February, McGregor has not confirmed a return opponent, Poirier has not confirmed a de facto reversal of his retirement, but the hatred, the real, raw, unvarnished, decade-plus hatred that has hardened and calcified between these two human beings through 3 fights, through broken bones and broken promises, through attacks on wives and disputes over charity money, through deleted tweets and refused olive branches, that hatred is not going anywhere, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Diamond beat his rival twice, retired on his own terms in his home state of Louisiana, in front of the people who raised him, and still woke up on a random Friday morning in February 20 to remind every single person on the internet exactly what happened between them inside that cage. That is not a grudge born of boredom. That is not a retired man with too much time on his hands. That is a legacy carved in bone, and it will endure for as long as both of these men are still breathing. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.
So I might have been making $14,000 to fight, and I get a $65,000 check. I'm like, you know, this is the life. This is how it's supposed to be. Got home, got out of debt, paid off my wife's car, you know. She moved with me to Florida, dropped out of school. Like, that wasn't by chance. I don't believe in coincidence like that. This was all supposed to happen. The people I met in my life through fighting, Mike Brown. I mean, the list goes on and on of incredible minds I've met through fighting, but I don't believe it was coincidence. Like, this was the path I was supposed to. It was written before I started, you know, following the script. I'm thankful, like, looking back on it now, because I still feel young, but sometimes I'll see old fights on TV and I'm like, man, I can't believe I came this far and done the things I've done. I'm just thankful. I try to stay in a place of gratitude.
That was Dustin Poirier, speaking about Conor McGregor, moments after shattering the Irishman's leg at UFC 264 in July 2021. 4.5 years later, officially retired and supposedly at peace, the Diamond logged onto X and proved that promise was empty talk. The Diamond chooses violence. On February 7th, 2026, exactly 7 months and 19 days after officially hanging up his gloves inside the octagon in front of a roaring New Orleans crowd, Dustin "The Diamond" Poirier, a man who had seemingly concluded one of the most decorated and beloved careers in UFC history, grabbed his phone, opened X, scrolled his timeline, and did something that sent shockwaves through the entire combat sports universe. He didn't announce a surprise comeback back. He didn't reveal lucrative business ventures or post cryptic training footage suggesting his retirement might be temporary. Instead, the 37-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana, quote-tweeted a video clip posted the previous day by @Mastarma on February showing Conor McGregor attempting a karate stance against Poirier during one of their past encounters, and attached 7 words that immediately exploded across the entire MMA social media ecosystem like an unannounced bomb. Beat his nuts. Felt so nice. I did it twice. Within 24 hours, that single post accumulated over 15,000 likes, more than 900 reposts, and hundreds of replies and quote tweets from fans, media accounts, and fellow fighters who couldn't believe what they were witnessing unfold in real time. A retired champion 7 months removed from his farewell bout, still carrying enough raw, unfiltered venom toward his most famous rival to publicly demolish the biggest name in UFC history without hesitation or regret. And he was far from finished. Poirier didn't fire that initial shot and log off to enjoy his Friday afternoon peacefully. He stayed on the timeline, scrolled through replies, and engaged in hand-to-hand digital warfare with anyone who dared step into his mentions to defend Conor McGregor's honor. When a fan with a handle @Wingwe_ replied claiming the third fight doesn't count, implying the UFC 264 leg break stoppage wasn't a legitimate victory for Poirier, Diamond fired back without mercy. Check his record. and my record you. When another user accused Poirier of becoming a wrestler across the trilogy to avoid getting knocked out by McGregor's left hand, Poirier asked, pointedly, who actually initiated the grappling exchanges in those fights. And when yet another fan attempted claiming the third fight was neck and neck before the freak leg injury ended it, Poirier shut down the revisionist history with surgical precision. Definitely not neck and neck. I was punishing him. The MMA media machine amplified every word with breathless urgency. Home of Fight posted a complete Instagram compilation of the entire tweet thread, captioning the episode as Poirier feeling bored and deciding on a whim to start posting about his battles with McGregor for internet entertainment. A CDMMA screenshot the exchange in its entirety and added the full breadth of Poirier's remarks for context, packaging it as a complete demolition job. The fight course summarized the situation with characteristic bluntness, describing what Poirier was doing as methodically cooking McGregor's loyal defenders throughout the day. Fan accounts across Instagram and Threads reposted screenshots with captions declaring that the hatred is real, as if anyone who had followed this rivalry for the past 12 years needed reminding of that particular fact. Fan reels described Poirier as outright eviscerating McGregor, and perhaps most significantly, MMA Uncensored connected the social media barrage directly to the most tantalizing rumors circulating in the sport. Dustin Poirier goes off on Conor McGregor. Will we see a fourth fight? A question tied to the widely discussed possibility of a UFC event at the White House on June 14, 2006, where McGregor's long-awaited return to competition could theoretically headline. Because here's the context that makes this more than a retired fighter killing time on social media. McGregor has been teasing an octagon return relentlessly throughout early 20. He has posted about being back in training camp. He has declared publicly that he possesses huge plans, a colossal bank, and modern medical science superpowers at his disposal. He has invoked God, recited the Lord's Prayer on his timeline, and promised the entire world that they have seen nothing yet. Meanwhile, reports from both Sportskeeda and Essentially Sports indicate that Poirier has specifically hinted at coming out of retirement to be the man who welcomes McGregor back to the cage, potentially at that rumored White House card that has captured the imagination of the entire MMA fanbase. McGregor, for his part, has remained conspicuously silent on Poirier throughout this cycle. As of February 8, 2026, no direct response from McGregor to any of the taunt posts has materialized. He has been posting on X about family, about cigars, about his Catholic faith, and about his ambiguous return timeline. But he hasn't engaged with Poirier's provocations in any way whatsoever. The shots, as of right now, are entirely one-sided. But make no mistake, this wasn't some random outburst from a bored retiree scrolling Twitter with nothing better to do. Poirier has repeatedly and emphatically denied any possibility of reconciliation with McGregor in multiple interviews over the years. When McGregor commented "Congrats bro" on a social media post celebrating the birth of Poirier's newborn child in early 2026, a seemingly benign, even gracious gesture of goodwill from a former rival, Poirier dismissed it entirely, refusing to acknowledge the olive branch. In past sit-down interviews with Ariel Helwani, when asked directly point-blank whether the feud with McGregor was finally over, Poirier's answer was exactly 2 words long, the second word being Conor, and the first being a vulgarity that cannot be repeated here. There has been no there has been no burying of the hatchet. There has been absolutely nothing that even remotely resembles closure between these two men. To understand why, you have to travel back more than a decade. To the night, a brash, trash-talking Irishman destroyed a kid from Cajun country in 10 seconds, unknowingly setting in motion one of the most deeply personal, most bitterly contested, and most commercially successful rivalries in the entire history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. How the rivalry was built, how it soured, and how it turned ugly. Their collision course began at UFC 78, held on September 27, 2014 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Conor McGregor was the ascending comet of the 45-pound featherweight division, a brash, impossibly confident, electrifying Irish southpaw who had weaponized trash talk and psychological warfare into a performing art that the sport of mixed martial arts had simply never witnessed before, at that caliber. Poirier, meanwhile, was a talented but still developing 25-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana, a kid from deep Cajun country who had dropped out of high school, spent time locked up in juvenile detention, and ultimately found salvation, identity, and purpose through combat sports when absolutely nothing else in his young troubled life could provide those things for him.